Hello and welcome to Mac Power Users. My name is Stephen Hackett, and I have the pleasure of being joined by my friend and yours, Mr. David Sparks.
Hello, Stephen. Returning from your triumphant week at the St. Jude Podcastathon. How you doing, buddy? Getting any sleep?
Yeah, I'm catching up on sleep slowly but surely. Everyone's left town now. I'm back to myself in the pod cabin, and yeah, quite the week.
Yeah. So let's talk about it a little bit. We're going to do more of this and more power users, but where's the number stand as we record?
Yeah, as we record this, we passed $830,000 on Tuesday the 24th, which is it's so incredible. The current record was 776,000, so we have just blown past that, and who knows where it'll be by the time this is out or the end of the month. But this is the last MPU episode that'll be out before the campaign closes, so it is your last chance to go support St. Jude this year through our campaign. You want to go to stjude.org/relay. One of the really cool things in the podcastathon this year was Mike got to interview a researcher at St. Jude who works on microscopes. And then when Mike was in Memphis, we got to take a tour of this guy's lab. And his team was not satisfied with like off the shelf microscopes. They're looking like into cells, right? Like, I mean,
yeah,
it's not a microscope you remember from like high school science lab. This thing looks like it's like there's a laser bouncing around. It's wild. Yeah. Anyways, Dr. Stabley and his team wanted more power and more flexibility than what they could get off the shelf. And so they're building their own, and that includes both 3D printing and resin printing custom parts to like quickly prototype things. Just fascinating. And that sort of research, like they're going down a rabbit hole that they wouldn't be able to in traditional funding methods and with traditional grants and that sort of thing. But that's because people like our dear listeners support St. Jude directly. So just a tiny fraction of like the tip of the iceberg of what St. Jude does. But it was really cool to see it up close last week.
Yeah. And I've heard from several listeners that because during the last show, I made the point that like you don't have to make a huge contribution. I know we have people listening to this that are students or retired, and I got several messages from people who said, when you said that, you're right, and they made small contributions, and that makes a huge difference. So like if you're listening and it's the last week and you haven't done it yet, give it a shot. Just give up Starbucks tomorrow and just make a contribution, and it feels a lot better than drinking a Starbucks. I'll tell you that.
It takes everyone, right? This is a big mission. They do a lot of stuff, and it takes everybody. And that's baked into St. Jude's DNA from the very beginning. Danny Thomas, their founder, was all about the small donors giving just what they can. And yes, we've had some large gifts this year, but it does take everybody. So go head over to stjude.org/relay and let's get this thing over the finish line strong.
Yeah. All right. So since you were gone, we got new iPhones and we got a release of a new operating system. So today we're going to focus in on that. I thought we'd start out just talking about impressions of our new hardware.
Yeah. So I've got the iPhone 16 Pro. I downsized from the Max this year, and I've been able to handle all of them now. The phones did get a little bit bigger, and the Max is pretty big. But I wanted to see kind of what the regular Pro was about. And since the camera was the same on both the sizes, I felt like this was a good year to do it. And so far, I like the smaller size quite a bit. The Max does perform better if you're using it as like a video player and that sort of thing. But the Pro is really good and definitely more compact. And so far, I'm really liking it. But David, I do have to address a little bit of a controversy that happened around me. So I said on this show, and on Connected, that I was going to get the white titanium. And a bunch of people remember that on Connected, I said, if Apple makes a brown phone, that'll be the one I buy. So I felt compelled to get the desert titanium. So this was a last minute change. And it is not brown, but it's also not pink. It's like a coppery, not quite rose gold. It's really interesting. If you took natural titanium and just shifted the warmness slider like to the right a little bit, you would be a desert titanium. It looks very fancy. I have it in a Apple Silicon case called Stone, which is kind of like this like gray green color. It looks very fancy. It's the fanciest phone I think I've ever carried in terms of looks, but it's that's what I've got. So the 16 Pro in Desert Titanium.
The Zune Special.
Yes.
So when you share like photos with your wife, do you squirt them at her?
Man, there's some weird ideas with the Zune, right? Just
Yeah.
real strange stuff.
Yeah. I remember when Bomber did that interview, for people who don't know what I was just talking about. When they came with the Zune, the Bomber would say, "Yeah, you just squirt songs at your friend." That was their name for sharing. I thought, that's like the worst name for sharing I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
nuts.
Anyway, yeah, cool. What about cases? What'd you get for a case?
So I've got, like I said, the Apple Silicon case. I also have the Peak Design case because listeners may remember that I have the mounts on my bikes, and so I can mount my phone to the handlebars, and then I use them. They're actually the really good cycle tracking on iOS. It's a bike computer basically. The Apple Silicon case is fine. Like, I've never been a huge fan of Apple Silicon cases, but Finewoven's gone and it was bad anyways. And I wanted to see what the pass through for the camera control was like. I think we'll talk more about camera control in a second. So the Silicon case is fine. I'm afraid the Peak Design people are in the same position they were last year. Remember last year, they and others did a cutout for the action button, and they had to come back a few months later and re-release the case with a button on the case that passed through to the action button. This time, they've done the same thing. It's a cutout kind of around the camera control, and I'm not sure it works very well. Like it kind of puts your thumb at a weird angle to kind of get down in there. I know other cases have bigger cutouts. The Peak Design was actually like basically hugs the outside of the camera control. It's definitely not optimal. I think the way Apple does it with the Sapphire pass through is the way to go. Now, will other manufacturers figure that out or like be able to get that going over time? I'm sure they will, but this is early days. But I worry about Peak Design in particular, that they've made the same mistake they made last year. And I guess we'll see what they and other case makers do over the coming months.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I got the big one again. I
Yeah.
talked about this with William last week. I feel like the inflection point on the phone is, are you okay using it two-handed? Because a lot of people are like, no, I just want to pull out of my pocket and use one hand and do anything with it. And if that's the case, get the small one. I don't mind doing things two-handed. And I like being able to, watch a YouTube video in bed or whatever on it in the bigger screen. Also, sadly, I'm closer to 60 than 50 at this point. My eyes aren't as good. So if I want to bump up text size without losing a lot of text, the big one, there's just, for quote unquote reasons, I'm a big phone guy. I don't feel like it feels any bigger than, well, I know it's slightly bigger, but like my hand doesn't notice it in terms of weight or size. It's fine. The bezels are smaller. People who've seen them know. In terms of the cases, you and I are so on the same track with cases. It's almost boring, right? But without talking about it, I also ordered the Peak Design one, and I ordered the Silicon from Apple. I got the gray one, because that seems to be a trend for me lately, and it's very neutral. And I got the natural titanium phone, so it kind of matches nicely. And like you, I think the Peak Design one isn't as good because that capacitive touch button for camera control makes a lot of sense. So I think what I'll do is I'll be using my Peak Design when I get on my bike, and generally otherwise use the Apple one. And to be honest, I don't really keep it in a case that often when I'm just around the house anyway. So I think this is going to be my year of Apple Silicon case. And I may even get like a red one for the holidays just for giggles. I think it's fine. I don't mind the red one. And like I said, we've got a point later about camera control. But before we get there, a couple things I wanted to call out is ultra wide is noticeably improved.
Yes.
I went to Disneyland, shot pictures as you do. Labs members will have got this stuff by the time the show publishes. And it looks a lot better. I mean, the ultra wide needed an upgrade. And now I'm thinking, okay, 5X lens, you need an upgrade too. I'm never satisfied, right? If they're going to put 3 lenses in, there's always going to be a worse one, and I always want that one to get better. But ultra wide, I use more than a 5x, and I use more for actual pictures that I care about. So I'm glad that's the one that got the upgrade, and good on them for making it better. I feel like there's no noticeable improvement for performance coming from the iPhone 15 Pro. So it's a 1 year update, so of course not. But I just honestly can't tell any difference with like the stuff I do on it. Maybe that'll make more sense when we get further down the Apple Intelligence road and the extra RAM helps. But for now, it doesn't really feel anything different. And something interesting I'm doing this year, forever, when I set up a new phone, it prompts me for my, iCloud account, but then it prompts me for the classic, the legacy iCloud account.
Yes. You and I are in the same boat, I think, there.
Yeah, and I don't run the legacy account on any devices. So I have to go through, so I don't get the two-factor verification anywhere. I have to have it fail and then say, okay, send me a text message.
Yep.
And because I don't have a device I can check it on. And I thought this year I'm going to try and completely abandon the legacy account. So anytime I get that, I just go to the App Store and re-download the app under my primary account. And the only thing that is a downside is like I can't see the movies I bought. And over the years I bought, maybe 20 or 30 movies, but like they're the classics, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, all that stuff is available to me via streaming. And I do have the legacy account on my Apple TV, which is the one place where I would watch them.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And in my Vision Pro. So I'm just like, I think I'm going to be able to pull this off with just running the phone entirely off the proper iCloud account. But I'll report in on that after a few months. But if you were thinking about it, it seems to be working for me so far. The only thing is you have to download apps under your main account. That's the only hang up so far.
Yeah, I'm in that same boat. Legacy Apple ID for all purchasing, and then a different one for iCloud. And I added the purchasing account to my iCloud family, but then never did an additional step. Like I just keep logging into both, and it is a bit of a pain. But
yeah.
My transfer process, I did the phone to phone direct transfer where it moves everything over. It took like 6 hours. I let it run overnight, and I did have an issue, and I saw this. Other people had this as well. Jason Snell was sitting on my couch and had this problem where my eSIM wouldn't move at first. And so I let the phone do the complete transfer. And then by the time it was done, my eSIM could move over. And if you haven't gone through that process, it's really straightforward. The phone basically asks, do you want to move your phone number to your new phone? And you have to authenticate with Face ID on the old phone to like verify that it's you. And then it takes a few minutes and your phone number and your service is moved over. It's pretty great. This is the second or third time I've done it. And other than it just basically not doing it the first time, it's really smooth. And like your voicemails come over, like it's all much less fiddly than the old SIM card days. When you have to like pull a SIM card out of the side of an iPhone, at least for me, I felt like I needed to do it in like a clean room.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, okay, like put a towel down, like don't let the dog in here. Like the SIM card falls and the dog eats it. Right. Then you're going to AT&T. But the eSIM thing is cool. And I know it's rolling out more and more as time goes on.
Yeah. I had no problem transferring my phone with the eSIM. I actually connected them by USB-C or actually Thunderbolt cable. And there was a bit of delay because the new phone didn't have the beta on it, the 0.1 beta. So that took 2 hours to get the new beta. I don't know why it took so long, but once it did the proper transfer with the cable, it was like a couple hours. It was pretty fast via cable.
So camera control.
Yeah.
Apple just keeps adding buttons to these things. And this one is really interesting. So I'm sure people have seen and read a bunch of reviews by now where you can tap to take a picture and then there's like a half press and you can move between a bunch of menus with swipes. My sort of top line impression of this, granted this is just a few days in, is the same as it was during the keynote, that I feel like Apple kind of overloaded this thing, and I have not, even after what, 4 or 5 days of heavy usage, like I have not really been able to internalize what I'm supposed to do when, and that's a little bit frustrating.
I feel different. I feel like it's great. I like it. It's not that hard. I mean, honestly, I was worried that it was going to be too many accidental triggers.
Hmm.
And when we prepared the outline, I had not had any. This morning, I felt my phone was really hot in my pocket, and I pulled it out, and the camera was turned on. So
No.
I've had one accidental trigger in less than in about 5 days now. So but you got to affirmatively press it, even though it's capacitive. Just brushing it doesn't matter. And the way I naturally hold my phone, my fingers are not on it, so
Same.
I've not really had that problem. And I've already had the benefit of going somewhere and just holding it up like a proper camera and pushing that button and taking a picture, and I really like it. So I think it's great. They definitely over engineered it a bit, so you've got a lot of options, but that's cool. I'm glad they reached for it. There are settings so you can turn some of that down, but yeah, I think it's cool, and I really like it. So yeah, I'm a fan.
Yeah, in the camera settings as well as in accessibility settings, you have some options there. Say that the swiping like just doesn't work for you physically, you can turn that on or off. It is interesting, and this is like a larger conversation, probably for a different time, is the whole thing about like tones and undertones, and some of that is in the camera UI, some of it is in the camera control, some of it is preserved between sessions, some of it is not. I think there's still some straightening up to do in general in the camera app, but my criticism aside, and that can be solved with software. Like really, what I would want is two modes. I'd like to switch between which camera I'm using and then probably tone. And if I could turn all the others off, that'd be fine with me. And maybe that'll come at some point. But it's a great example of what Apple's good at, even though it's a little confusing in places. Like the hardware and the software and the haptics and like it unlocking like creativity in a new way. Like Apple kind of shines in those areas. And so it is very Apple-y, even if it's a bit fiddly.
Well, that's not the only hardware I got, Steven. I also bought a pair of the AirPods 4 and thought
Okay.
I'd just weigh in on those real quick. They're AirPods,
Yeah.
they work like AirPods. They're a little tighter in my ear, which is better. I've never really had a problem with the old ones falling out, but these actually stay in my ear even better than the old ones. But that's just, biology. It depends on the human. I've been playing with the noise cancellation and around the house and stuff. It's pretty great. I work in the studio and it's downstairs, and sometimes the family's doing stuff in the other room, but I don't need it. I'm not recording. I usually only shut my door when I'm recording.
Hmm.
So I can just turn on the noise isolation with them, and it's enough to block them out. I don't think it's as, it's established that they aren't as good as AirPods Pro, but it's a nice new feature, and they're AirPods. I don't know what else to say. They work good.
I went to the store and I looked at the black Apple Watch Ultra 2.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
It
Oh
looks so
boy.
good.
Yeah, it does look nice. I went to the Apple store as well.
It's so sick. Very good. And I did not do it. I'm still holding on to the Ultra One. I did pick up the Ocean Band, the kind of the rubbery one with like, look, the yellow one looks like macaroni and cheese. It's got like the holes all the way through it.
Yeah.
In black with the natural titanium finish on the buckle, so it matches the watch. It looks really good. But next time I upgrade, it will be a black Apple Watch Ultra. Man, I just like held it. And because it's black, it does look a little bit thinner. It's not. It's like literally the same as my watch. But boy, man, it is handsome.
Yeah. Although I think if I were to get a new one, I'd still get the natural titanium out. I just like the look of that. But, I went to the Apple store to pick up my phone because I'm really busy right now. And I forgot on the Friday morning to wake up and order it, like all the nerds do. And so I didn't make my order till like 10 a.m. Pacific. And the only way I could get it early is to go in the store. So I went to the store at like 5 p.m. and it was a weird experience. I mean, I felt like the Apple Store employees were just beat. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, they they were because even if you had a prearranged time, you still had to wait in line. So all the entitled people were mad about that, and the employees are trying to keep everybody happy, and they're saying, "Look, our Wi-Fi is shot. If you want to like transfer your phone, don't do it here." And it was just a very weird experience for an Apple Store. It was not kind of the upbeat, positive feel you get normally. But I'm going to give them a pass because it was 5 p.m. and it was launch day.
Yeah, Mary picked my phone up for me because it was podcastathon morning, and we wanted it for the show. But I went the next day on Saturday. Jason Snell got an Apple Watch Series 10, which really looks nice. Like very like the 10% thinner. It's noticeable on your wrists. And Saturday they looked pretty worn out. I was like, how's it going? He's like, yeah, it's been busy. I was like, yeah, I'm sure it has been. This episode of Mac Power Users is brought to you by SaneBox. Let me tell you a little story. I was recently out of work for about a week for the podcastathon, busy at St. Jude, and my email just basically went unattended for several days. And I'm telling you, without SaneBox, I would have been in trouble because I use SaneBox to filter all of my email. The Sane Black Hole is fantastic. If I get an email from somebody I never want to hear from again, I simply drag it in there and they're gone forever. I did a lot of snoozing last week as well. So I saw an email, knew, you know what, I'm going to deal with that tomorrow or over the weekend. Again, a simple drag, a simple move. And that was all taken care of for me. And with features like Deep Clean, SaneBox can help you scrub out old, unnecessary emails and free up space in your email account. You can also use SaneBox to move attachments to Dropbox or other cloud services, also saving space. They just have a lot of great tools for managing your email, and it works at the email level, so you don't have to be locked into some weirdo mail app. You can use the mail app, or if you're like David Sparks, move around between mail apps, and SaneBox is always there with you. Prices start at just $4 a month, and there's a 14-day free trial waiting for you at sanebox.com/MPU. Once you're there, you can receive a $25 credit on any plan, and 2/3 of MPU listeners who try SaneBox end up subscribing. I love it. You're probably going to love it too. That's sanebox.com/MPU.
Okay, so let's start with Mac OS. We're the Mac Power users. We got Mac OS Sequoia. Couple big reviews out on the internet. Jason Snell did one. John Voorhees did one over at Six Colors and Mac Stories. But I thought we should talk about the parts that delight us. And
Yeah,
you really didn't play with the betas much on it, did you? I mean, I guess you had it on a
it was a
separate.
secondary machine for me this year. I am running it now on production, and it's totally fine. All my audio stuff works, which is nice. But yeah, I didn't get quite as much time in it, I think, as you did, certainly as John or Jason did. And I think there's a bit of an undercurrent to this of like, well, Apple Intelligence isn't here yet. So like, what's the point of Sequoia? But there is some good stuff in here. And I think particularly from like the power user perspective, actually some really interesting tools bringing the iPhone closer to the Mac. And that is what I've played with a lot. I think that's actually pretty interesting.
Yeah. So let's start there with iPhone mirroring. The feature is one that solves a problem a lot of Mac users have. Like something comes up on your phone and you got to go dig out your phone out of your pocket or the next room. And now you can just have your phone appear on your Mac screen as if it's just part of your Mac operating system. And you can interact with it. You can see notifications. You can interact with applications. And I'm a fan. I mean, I guess I keep saying that, but these are nice upgrades. Have you played with that much?
Yeah, it's wild that the mirroring stuff is really as smooth as it is. Like this all builds on continuity and all those technologies that have been in iOS for a long time. But I don't know why, but I just kind of had this fear when they demoed the mirroring that it was going to be like choppy or like you're using it like through the simulator. Like I use the Xcode simulator quite a bit now, and it's not the smoothest thing in the world, at least on an M2 Pro. laptop. I'm due for an upgrade later this year, but it's not only very performant, but I also think Apple really thought through the security of the mirroring. So a pin is acquired at least the first time. You can then tell it to bypass that. The iPhone remains locked. So if you're controlling an iPhone that's on the kitchen counter from your Mac in the living room, someone walks by, can't see what you're doing. And when you unlock your phone for the first time after mirroring has happened, you get a notification. So say that someone else was at your Mac and you weren't looking at your phone, you can see, oh gosh, someone was in here. Like I think they thought through all the reasonable security implications of this.
It's great, and I do think I think this is going to be a niche feature. Some people are going to really love it, and others are not going to care as much. But I was thinking, like, what if you're like at work and you've got like your lockdown work computer, but and assuming I guess IT enables this, you run this and you can have your personal iPhone, so you can have kind of both of your worlds on one device. I just think there's a lot of good use cases for this, and like you, I think this is something that's been a long time in the making and implemented pretty well. I don't feel like this is something they kind of slapped together. I suspect this has been in the works for a long time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's nice, and it's just a good feature. Makes a ton of sense to me on the Mac. I also don't want it to go by, gang, that I want to set the record straight that here is the first time Stephen has said that his M2 feels long in the tooth.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there are definite rumors of M4s.
Oh, I know.
In a couple
It's
months.
coming. Yeah. Building Widgetsmith a bunch, just it hurts.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a big app. Does a lot of things.
All right.
I think another interesting thing about this mirroring situation is that in 18.1 and 15.1, so in future updates, they're going to have drag and drop coming. I saw something on, I think, Mastodon over the weekend, and someone had like set it up to be funny, right? Like they had taken a screenshot and they were airdropping it from the phone to the Mac through iPhone mirroring. So it was like really weird. Like you're controlling them from one input device, but they're sending, very strange. I have not played with drag and drop yet. My Sequoia beta machine, I need to update. But if you can drag and drop files between them, and I'm sure in the background that will basically just be airdrop. Like I don't think they've developed some sort of new file transfer protocol for this. But this could be awesome. I mean, if you just, I know you and I do this all the time because we take a lot of screenshots just for our work. And inevitably, when you're in a hurry, is when iCloud Photo Library is like taking its sweet time to sync. It's like, no, I need to email this person now. Like, give me my screenshot. Or being able to move those over, or large video files. Or I just think it's really interesting. And I think drag and drop between the two is going to be beneficial again to the people that this clicks for. And for me, like I've used it several times. Like I have it in the dock. It's in the dock by default in Sequoia in a clean install. I've got it in my dock, and there have been a couple of times now. It's like, oh, I need a certain thing that otherwise I'd pick my phone up for. I can just leave my phone on the charger, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Are you going to keep it running like just generally on your device?
I don't like it like during the workday.
Yeah.
I don't think so, but I do have it where I don't need a pin or anything, so I can just click it and connect. So, and it's fast enough.
Yeah. So what I'm doing the same thing. I'm using it as needed. I'm still kind of my main use for my phone on my desk is a standby, calendar, clock, whatever thing. But occasionally I do have need for it. And I just like having the ability to hit the button and pull it up. If you haven't tried it yet, you absolutely should. And you will find excuses to use it.
You can also have your notifications from your phone mirrored on the Mac. And this is like related but separate from the visual mirroring. You don't have to be running an app to do this. There's a setting in system settings notifications on the Mac to enable this. And inside of there, you can tell it, I just want notifications from this app or that app. And how it works is a notification comes in on your phone and it comes in on your Mac. And if it has those controls, like do, for instance, right? snooze for 15 minutes, snooze for 30 minutes, whatever. Those appear and they're just right there in Notification Center on the Mac. And you may be thinking, Notification Center on the Mac is a disaster. I mostly agree, but in Sequoia, way at the bottom, below all the widgets, so not up near the notifications, which I don't understand, but at the very bottom, there is a clear all button. And I would say this is like watchOS notifications. By default, everything comes in and it's too much. But there are a couple of iPhone apps that actually is really handy for me to have notifications on my Mac. Do being one of them, which I use for a couple of very specific things. And so I went through and basically disabled them for all my iPhone apps except a few. Still tinkering with it, but I would say don't brush this feature aside because of the default settings from Apple are kind of overwhelming. Like take some time, tune it to what you want, and I think it's actually pretty good.
Yeah. Windows system. We talked about this after the release of the betas, but this tiling system they came up with, I feel like, is the best job they've done for window management on Mac to date.
Yeah.
They being Apple.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. There's a lot of ways to control it. You can control it under the green stoplight. You can also control it with keyboard, and you can control it in the menu. They've given you all the various control mechanisms to move windows around, and they've got the usual suspects, right, left, quadrants. One of the ones that it does that I think is cool is it can swap the right and the left screen. Like if you have two, but you're like, no, I want this on the right side. They've got a single command that will swap them right and left, which I've not seen third parties do before. But there's other stuff you can do with the keyboard, right?
Yeah, you can hold down the Option key and drag a window. Or you can do the thing that a lot of third parties do is that you can use the edge of the screen as like a snap guide, like take Safari and slam it into the side of the screen and then it resizes. It's pretty cool. And there are some settings that you can change how some of these things work. But I really like that they kind of did both, right? That they both did move and resize to like just change this one window. And they did the fill and arrange thing, which is move this window and the others kind of go around it. I think they really covered what 90% of people need from a window tiler. Now, for a lot of people, I think this is like classic Apple in the terms of like most people have never heard of window tiling and never would have unless Apple or until Apple put it in the OS. And most people will just use what Apple did. And in this case, Apple, I think, killed it. But there are still third parties that I think will continue to do well in their businesses that do more, right? Things like Moom, things like Better Snap Tool, which is what I use, because I use a layout on my laptop that's 1/3, 2/3 left and right, and Apple system doesn't do that. And so I still think third-party apps are fine, but I think Apple definitely has covered the gamut of what most people need.
Yeah, and I think our audience is not going to be the people who've never heard of window tiling before.
That's true. Yeah, it's your friends and family out there.
Yeah, exactly. So they're going to have their minds blown. But I do think this is nearly adequate for me, but not really. As this came out, Moom released a new version, which has got some just really cool features that I like. Under the green button in Moom, you can have preset arrangements. Like I have one for podcasting, and I click that, and it does very custom arrangement of specific windows that I use all the time, and that works for all my shows. So I don't have to like make a separate one for each show. And there's just a lot of cool stuff you can do with Moom, and like it's got Apple script support and everything. A couple disappointments that I had with the window tiling that Apple did. There's a couple things that really kind of got to me. One is that you can't go anywhere past kind of the usual, like you can't do a custom width, which I would think even just like 1 or 2 would be nice. Like,
yeah,
or cover thirds in addition to halves. Like, I think that would have been useful.
Yes.
The other thing is you can't custom set the keyboard shortcuts. As far as I can tell, I went through the settings and wasn't able to find a place. Maybe I'm missing it, and everybody will write me and tell me I'm wrong. But in the usual places, there are not keyboard settings for this. And I know I could create custom ones with the traditional method in macOS where you create custom settings, but I feel like it should be more manageable than that. And when I use the laptop keyboard, the built-in ones make a ton of sense because the globe key is right next to the control key, and that's the main thing. Hold down globe and control and then do something, right? Um, but with the full-size Apple keyboard, the globe key is way in the heck over above the arrow keys. So like using the built-in keyboard shortcuts isn't that useful to me. And it's not quite as deep as Moom is. So as tempted as I was, I think I'm going to be sticking with Moom, especially the new version.
Yeah, I think the custom, like just a little bit of more customization would go a long way. I don't think Apple's going to do it, but again,
No.
most people, I don't think need something like that. So,
Yeah,
um,
agreed.
the green button's got a lot going on now, right? Because the old full screen and split screen stuff is still in there. And if you have multiple displays, it also has an option to move your window to the other display. There's a lot going on, but Apple's done a good job, I think, visually breaking that down. Like it shows you a little preview of what's going to happen. And, I think for the constraints of like putting it behind a window control, I think they did a good job.
This is an interesting discussion of legacy support because Apple's always been the company that's willing to dump legacy support for things as the operating system evolves. And, Microsoft was historically the company that would never dump legacy support because of their user base and the fact that there's so much in enterprise. But for whatever reason, when it comes to window management, Apple keeps adding new elements but never takes anything away. And I think they are getting to a point where they wouldn't be able to do much more because they're stretching the existing interface to its limit.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, even with like mission control, right? It still has expose. Like they never get rid of a window system except spaces that could be vertical. Spaces are just horizontal now. They've been just horizontal for a long time. You're right. There's a lot of stuff in here, and I think they're well aware that this is one of the most ingrained habits a Mac user can have. Like window management is to a lot of people sacred, and so they don't want to remove things. But that's true all over the place, right? It's true in a lot of other areas, like in iOS as well. So I get it, but I think they probably feel a bit stuck.
Yeah. And I would be surprised if they did much more on this in the future. I think at this point, they're going to view this as a solved problem from their standpoint. And if the existing tools aren't good enough, go somewhere else. And that wasn't the case for a while because, Windows did a lot of the stuff we just got years ago. And all of us were saying, well, how come Mac doesn't do that? So now they can say, yeah, we did that. But I don't think they're going to go much further. This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Things, the award-winning to-do app, ready for iOS 18 and macOS Sequoia. Download a free trial on your Mac. Things, one of the best task managers in the Apple ecosystem, has just been updated for iOS 18, macOS Sequoia, watchOS 11, and visionOS 2. For iOS 18, the app now provides two controls for Control Center, one for quickly adding a new to-do and another for quickly jumping into your lists. To choose which list, you simply flip the control over like you would when configuring a widget. These controls can also be added directly to the bottom of your lock screen for instant access. Things has also added support for the new home screen appearance modes, including a beautiful new dark icon that appears when you switch to dark mode. And the icon and widgets also adapt to your color of choice in the new tinted mode. And of course, these features are available on your iPad as well. Things has been around a long time. It's one of the best task managers on the Apple ecosystem. I think their user interface is gorgeous, and it makes managing your tasks fun. If you can turn work into fun, you're halfway there. And when it comes to Things, what you'll love most is the app's design. It doesn't just look good, it feels good to use. This is a native app made to a very high standard of quality, and it's a 2-time winner of the Apple Design Award. So if you haven't tried Things, you should check out the latest version. Head over to the website things.app, things.app. Learn all the great features of Things, download a free trial for your Mac. You can also find it on the App Store. Just search for Things. Whatever it is you want to accomplish in life, Things can help you get there. Try Things today at things.app. You won't regret it. And our thanks to Things from Cultured Code for their support of the Mac Power users and all of Relay FM.
So we have a bit more on Sequoia, and I can't believe we're going to start with this, but Sequoia builds on earlier releases with the Apple TV-like moving desktop wallpaper feature. And under the hood in Sequoia, it's actually like built very differently, and I struggle to like find an actual image version of some of these things for my wallpaper library. But the inclusion of Macintosh, which is the sliding panels based on the classic macOS, is an incredible screensaver. And like the other ones, when you log in, they sort of slow to a stop, and then that becomes your wallpaper. So over the course of a day, your wallpaper could be different, right? Each time you log in. It is so much fun, and Apple they do a lot more than they used to, but they don't do a ton of like looking backwards. So it's fun to see them embrace some of this stuff. And I just think it's like the most fun thing in this OS in some ways.
Yeah, it's really great. And I would recommend going into the settings on this one if you like it. Like I have mine set up to do a random color. So I'm often getting new, different looks for it. The way I understand it, this is dynamically created. These aren't just like 10 images. It's like dynamically creating the image. So that means that it looks different every time you see it. And it's just so fun. But you can have it use a spectrum or a specific color. But I've got random colors as well, which is just kind of fun. Go into the settings on this one, you'll find. And I suspect I'm going to be using this in years. I just think it's really sticky for me. Except when I'm screencasting and I have to turn it off, and it always makes me a little sad.
Yeah, it's probably a bit much for that, isn't it?
Yeah. I try to just use like a gray background because, like, if you use a wallpaper associated with a specific operating system, it dates itself pretty quickly.
Yeah, that's probably true. Sequoia also brings, and this has been talked about a lot, about screen recording prompts. And this was a big thing in the beta, where apps that have access to record your screen now ask repeatedly for permission for that. And at one point in the beta, it was weekly, and basically everyone got their pitchforks out, and now it's monthly. And I'll have a 9to5Mac link in the show notes. There are a couple of ways to disable this. I'm not sure I would, and I'm not sure that it's going to actually fix it permanently, but it kind of opens the question, right? The Mac, and we're not even like getting into the ridiculous way Apple changes Gatekeeper, where running an unsigned app on the Mac is actually quite difficult at this point, and Apple gives you a lot of warnings you have to walk through before you are able to do it. It's nuts. But Apple continues to try to wrangle macOS to be a more secure operating system, and they've done it at a bunch of the system level. Now they're doing it at the application level. And I'm just not sure that a screen recording app needs a monthly reminder. And it comes up like as a modal on the screen. It's not a notification or something like that. And if you don't approve it, the app stops working, which is understandable. I don't know. I really want to hear what you think about this.
Well, I think it's overkill for you and me and probably most of our audience. However, I have in my personal life several people who have their Macs kind of taken over because they did stupid things. And I also have heard from people who had their Macs taken over by a bad actor in their life and they just didn't know it. And I think that Apple is hearing those stories, and I think their priority is going to be those customers. Like, the people like my mother-in-law. I think that like having a backdoor way to turn it off, like a terminal command or something, kind of defeats the purpose, because a lot of the people who would do this maliciously will figure that out or or the apps will do that for them.
Yeah.
And I think generally, the more I think about it, I'm willing to put up with the inconvenience if it means a few more people don't have girlfriends, boyfriends, husbands, wives snooping on them,
Sure.
or more people like my mother-in-law don't have people installing spy software on their computer. I think that overall I'm okay with it, but I still like flinch every time it comes up.
Yeah. It's definitely complicated. And I think there's a real conversation that is happening of like, do repeated notifications give people the opportunity? Because like what Apple would say, I think, is, hey, look, you're going to get this notification. You may think, oh, I don't need that app anymore, or I didn't know that app was installed, and I'll turn it off. But I think most people, especially after repeat exposure, are just going to hit OK and move
Yeah.
on with their day. And I don't know if anything can fix that behavioral like issue in users, but I'm not sure this does exactly what Apple wants it to do. I think we'll see over time. I think if we see more of this, right? Like there's nothing to say Apple wouldn't do this or couldn't do this for applications that have full disk access or, you know, any of the other permissions and system settings. So I don't know. As a user who has a bunch of apps that can do a bunch of things, I'm going to see this pretty often. And
Yeah,
I
me
get
too.
it, but at the same time, it's a bit eyebrow raising.
Yeah, and like you're right. I mean, does it work? I mean, for the types of people I was talking about, is this going to actually protect them? And I wouldn't be surprised if Apple's keeping an eye on that. Like, how often does the existence of that bug prompt the user to uninstall software? How many seconds between the time it appears and the time they click OK? Like, I'm sure that they're doing research on this, and I don't envy them because it's super annoying for us nerds, and we're going to complain. Like you, I have a ton of software that needs this access, and I'm totally fine with it. And the idea of having to approve it every month is going to drive me insane. But also, I'm also aware of people being victimized by stuff like this that
Yeah.
don't know better. And I don't know what the answer is. I don't think it's an easy problem to solve.
No, probably not. We had a question, actually several questions from listeners about Intel Macs. Like what's the future of my late Intel MacBook Air or whatever. And so to back up a second, macOS Sequoia is compatible with the same Intel machines that its predecessor was. Sonoma required Macs with a T2 security chip, and the same as with Sequoia. I am really struggling with these names that they start with the same letter. It's getting confusing. The cats were easy, right? It's like, what does the cat look like? That's the OS name. Not anymore. So that is the 2018 and later MacBook Pro, the 2020 MacBook Air, so only the last Intel MacBook Air, 2019 iMac or the 2017 iMac Pro, 2018 Mac Mini, and 2019 Mac Pro. So they didn't move it this year, but if you look at those numbers, they're all they're pretty close to the Apple Silicon transition.
Yeah.
And at some point, the scale is going to tip. And we're already in the transition to a degree that there's features in Sequoia and in Sonoma before it that don't support Intel Macs at all. Things obviously like Apple Intelligence, but in Sonoma, things like game mode and the high quality screen sharing and presenter overlay, some of these features are being built for Apple Silicon only for various reasons. I don't think there's been a discounting Apple Intelligence, and depending on how you feel about it, you may or may not think it's a major deal. But outside of Apple Intelligence, I don't think there's any huge features that have been dropped from Intel Macs. There's a bunch of little ones, though. It's a bunch of little paper cuts. And we are well beyond, talking about a year from now, WWDC 25, we 5 years since the Apple Silicon transition was announced, about 4 years since it started. And the PowerPC to Intel transition took 3 years. After 3 years, Snow Leopard came out, Intel only, no PowerPC. So we are already on borrowed time. compared with the previous transition. So we're just going to see. I kind of thought this might be the year, but it wasn't. But I think next year definitely could be.
Yeah, if you're on an Intel Mac right now, I would start saving. I think next year, if you want to stay with the current software, you're going to need to buy a new computer.
Yeah, and Apple does give security updates back 2 years. So if there's anything that comes up that's critical there, they'll take care of it in a security patch. But you're not going to get new features. You're not going to get the new rebuilt Mail app or whatever is coming next year. So yeah, I think you're probably right. I think if you're on an Intel Mac, I think the time has arrived to start setting aside, start planning, because it is. I think it's coming for us.
But the good news is you're going to love your new computer. I am so in the can for these Apple Silicon Macs. I can't even tell you.
This episode of MPU is made possible by Squarespace, the all-in-one website platform for entrepreneurs to stand out and succeed online. So whether you're just starting out, or you have a growing brand, or maybe you have one that needs a refresh, Squarespace is ready. You can stand out with a beautiful website, engage with your audience, and sell anything: products, services, and even content. Because Squarespace has everything you need all in one place, all on your terms. Let's think about a business website for a second. Think about some of the things you're going to need. You're going to need a way for people to get in touch with you via contact form. You're going to want probably a page telling people your story, what you're about. You may want a blog or podcast components, image galleries, and I bet you're going to want a way to send emails as well. And with Squarespace, email campaigns are just built in. You can make outreach automatic with email marketing tools that engage your community, drive sales, and simplify audience management. And all of your branding analytics flow from the website to the emails as well. So it's all built in. And if you are selling content, you can, of course, sell files that can be downloaded like PDFs, music, or ebooks, but you can also set up a paywall and sell content or courses as well. This is what I love about Squarespace, that all these tools are built in, they're all integrated, and they're all state of the art. Let's talk about payments for a second. We talked about content. How do you get paid? Well, you can accept credit cards, PayPal, or Apple Pay, but you can also offer customers the option to buy now and pay later with Afterpay and ClearPay. Anytime I'm helping somebody with a web project, I always use Squarespace. You should too. Go check it out at squarespace.com/MPU. There you will save 10% off your first purchase of a website or a domain. That's squarespace.com/MPU for 10% off your first purchase and to show your support for the show. Our thanks to Squarespace for their ongoing support of Mac Power users and all of Relay.
All right, let's move over to iPad and iPhone, iOS, iPadOS 18. As always, Federico Viticci does his opus over at Mac Stories. Dan Morin and Jason Snell over at Six Colors did a good one too. And actually, Dan did the iPhone and Jason did the iPad, which kind of makes sense. And but I thought we should just, again, talk about the stuff that is standing out to us.
Yeah, definitely go check out all these reviews. And I will say, somebody who works closely with Federico, he works harder on this than anybody. Like, the Mac Stories review is incredible. I read it as an EPUB because I'm a member over at Mac Stories, so I just put it in books and just like flipped through to my iPad. It was great. Like Sequoia, there's no Apple Intelligence features in 18.0, which is weird because Apple keeps advertising these phones as Apple Intelligence phones. They will be. They're not yet. It's very weird, but it's a temporary situation, right? These things are in beta. It's coming.
I feel like we'll probably get 18.1 with the first bits of Apple Intelligence next month, would be my guess. So too. In October. We'll see. But and it's interesting because we did a whole show on this, but they're rolling it out slowly. The first features, as far as I can tell, are all on device features, the safest, easiest. And I think there's a lot going on under the surface of the water over in Cupertino right now on Apple Intelligence. But let's talk about the stuff you do get. Home screen customization. So much home screen customization this year.
Yeah, it's a big year for that. So you've got some related features here. the home screen can now be put into dark mode, and that comes with its own sort of subset of options, like darkening the wallpaper as well. And this is a lot better than it was in the beta. Over the summer, developers had not, or actually in some cases, weren't able to update their apps to support light and dark mode icons on their own automatically. iOS will do its best to kind of apply a dark mode look. Some icons I have, it just gives up on, like the 1Password icon, for instance. As of our recording, they have not updated for this. And the system doesn't seem to know how to darken that icon. So it's just like a beaming light on my second home screen. But you can have dark mode icons, you can have them all the time, or you can have them automatic. Now, for me, this goes into something that I've been doing the last couple of months. I've actually changed and become from dark mode all the time to a person who uses light mode in the day and dark mode at night. And I kind of love it. And I'm just doing it sunrise to sunset. And so now when my phone is in dark mode, the home screen goes into dark mode as well, which is pretty cool. Again, some of the icons are a little weird. That'll get better with time. But I like that kind of everything is dark when you're in dark mode.
Yeah, me too. And I do it that way. I've done it that way a long time. And I think that's great. In addition to the kind of like the on off switch of dark mode versus light mode, you can also tint the colors to kind of take it out.
Yeah.
To make it less colorful. And there's a whole thing in the productivity racket these days where people want to make their phone boring, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not as attractive. And I'll say that I think the gray tint is the best one. And Apple's already kind of played with this in prior iterations, but kind of monochrome look. But if you really love orange, you can make it orange. And I haven't seen many people doing that in a while, but now that's a thing you can do.
Yeah, I don't think it looks great most of the time, but this may just not be for me. I really, though, I don't understand. I'm not the first person to say this, that there's not a, so tinting forces dark mode icons. The icons go dark when you're tinting. And I don't understand why there's not a light mode version of it as well. It seems weird that one thing is tied to another. And again, for me at least, I can't get this in a place where it looks good. Now, there's a lot of good features, right? You can pick your own color. There also is an eyedropper, and you can choose a color from your wallpaper to tint. So it is like say that you work on like a very popular widget making app for the iPhone. It's actually pretty cool to have your home screen and your tinted stuff like all kind of match. Your widgets get tinted as well. But for me personally, it's just not my favorite look. I do like the light mode and dark mode though. What do you think about the small, large icon change? Because that's the last thing in here. You can make the icons bigger. And when you do, they drop the labels underneath them, including on widgets, which has been weird because the iPad has not had widget labels, but the iPhone has. And now if you're in that larger mode, it gets rid of them. What do you think about that look?
I love it so much. I think that's the way it should have been for years. We all know our apps from the look of the icon. We don't need to have the name of the app under it. Less is more. So much so that I was with a friend the other day and I looked at her phone and she had the small icons with the labels and it was like repelling to me. I'm so in on this. I turned it on immediately. How about you?
I have them big. I like it too. I liked it more on the Max than on the regular Pro phone, but I've got it on and I love it on the iPad. The iPad has always had like weird spacing between the icons. And on the iPad, in my view, the large icons are like the right size. So I love it on the tablet.
Yeah. And to access that, it's confusing for people. Just on your home screen, long press and at the above top left button, you just tap that and it allows you to set the icon size and just try it. I bet you'll love it if you haven't tried it yet. Somewhat related is you can also customize the lock screen, and particularly you can customize the buttons. You know, historically you got the camera and the flashlight in the lock screen, so you could jump to the flashlight, jump to the camera. But now all the new phones have a camera button on it. So why do you need a camera button in the lock screen? And again, I'm all over this. The more I can make this thing do the stuff I need it to do, the better. because of who I am, right? I put the Disneyland app on that screen.
Perfect.
But it's perfect because like if I'm going to take a picture, we have the thing where they'll take your picture, but they need to scan your app so it gets added to your account. Or if I need to go, in the main gate and I need to get to my ticket quickly, I just love hitting that button and having the Disneyland app on my lock screen. I'm also messing with it in terms of focus mode. So maybe it'll only be in my Disneyland focus mode. But that was the first app I put there to say, oh yeah, this is something I definitely need to spend more time on.
Yeah, I have not changed my lock screen buttons. In the beta, I was all over the place trying things. We just missed supports it, so I spent a lot of time in that. The camera one is super redundant now. And so that one I think will be the one that goes. I joked with Mike Curley this weekend that I would just have the flashlight on both sides, like the most dad move you can
Yeah.
imagine. Maybe
Yeah.
maybe that and a compass, like I'd be ready to go.
Yeah.
But it's great. And the lock screen customization builds atop it's actually like the same mechanism under the hood as the new control center, which if you had told me in June that would be one of my favorite parts of iOS 18, I would not have believed you. But I love the new control center. Being able to put in not only rearrange Apple's controls. So I think I've talked about this before where I, for some reason, am like have icon blindness when it comes to Apple's clock app. I don't know which one is a timer or an alarm. Like I don't know. And so I have wide ones now that actually say alarm and timer. So I can just like tap on them. And
Okay.
you can build your own with a bunch of third-party apps. I know Greg has Drafts going, Widget Smith is going, a bunch of others where you can put your own actions into Control Center. And I've just really found it to be great. I have a whole screen of HomeKit ones. I'm digging it.
Yeah. I just did a labs video on this because I think this is my favorite feature of the new iOS. And at this point, I'm at 2.5 screens, but I might, I want to get an organization system to it, right? Because I've got like the main screen that has the usual stuff,
Yeah.
but there's other things I want to put in here too. And I find in kind of the way I use the phone, getting to control center controls is very quick. And oh man, I just think this is really great. And even the implementation, like when you drag it down, you can hold your thumb and it'll go all the way to the bottom screen.
Mm-hmm.
So like you can have 3 screens and not have it completely, crazy.
Yeah. I do wish I could change the icon each screen uses because it tries to make an assumption and sometimes it's not what I want. And I think also rearranging the icons themselves can get like if you thought moving app icons around was hairy, moving control center icons around is weird. Like sometimes they just don't move the way you expect them to, or even in the final release, like you have to go out of it and go back into it. It's just a little bit buggy still. But once you have it dialed in, it really is cool. Like I love my HomeKit screen where I just have a whole like house remote on my phone at all times.
Yeah, me too. I did the same thing. And it would be nice if you could move entire pages. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah.
But overall, this is a great interface. The way you can resize the buttons easily with your finger, the way third-party developers have already gotten it. Charlie Chapman's already done dark noise for it, so I've got a dark noise control center button, and just tap that, and it starts my thunderstorm, which gets an app and a shortcut off my home screen. I think this is only going to get better with time, but I don't have my strategy nailed down about this. I think maybe in like 6 months we should do a home screen control center kind of like hoedown on the show, and
Yeah.
once we have time to figure out what we're doing with them. But this is something that I think anybody listening should really invest a little time in and start experimenting and let us know what you're doing. I'd be curious to hear if people are doing interesting things. But already I've got kind of like the basics in screen one. And like you, I've got a whole HomeKit control center in screen two. And then I've got other stuff in screen three. I haven't got like my strategy down yet, but I want to do so much with this.
Another new feature here is the ability to hide apps and lock them. So you can long press on an app and a little contextual menu say require Face ID, and that will require authentication to launch the app. Some apps have had this on their own, like Day One, I think has had this. Some other like kind of privacy minded apps have done this, but now it's just built into the system. So if I want to have calculator behind a Face ID unlock, I can. You never know. I got secrets in PCalc. You can't go in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you can hide apps in the app library. So if you have an application you don't want someone thumbing through your phone to see, they won't see it. And what's really clever, I have no hidden apps on my phone, but I have the hidden apps folder, and it looks the same as if I had apps in it. So you can't even tell if someone has hidden apps by just looking in their app library. Apple thought that one through all the way, I think.
Yeah. 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 I haven't much use for it, but I think it's a great feature that needs to be there. Every year we get improvements to the Messages app. I think that is, I think Apple's even said that's the most used application on the phone. People text message all the time. So they want to stay competitive there. This year we got text effects and improvements to the text. But my favorite feature is send later, because I often get text messages from people and I don't want to reply at 10 p.m. at night. Or with the people I work with, a lot of times, 2 p.m. in the afternoon for me is much different time for them, and I really like the send later feature, because the problem is once I've seen the message, I'll forget to go back and reply at a more reasonable time. So send later kind of solves that for me.
Yeah, my wife was very excited about this. She's a huge send later in mail. She uses it all the time. I know if I get a mass email from her for something at school or church or something, and it's sent at 8 a.m., she's already at work, but I know she wrote it the night before and then did the send later thing. So really cool that's come to Messages as well. It's a good move. And RCS support is also really nice. I've got a bunch of Android people in my life, and to be able to have iMessage features like typing indicators and large media attachments and tapbacks, most of that stuff just works in RCS much better than it did in SMS. And it is seamless. I've seen a lot of questions about this. So it's really the same as it always has been. If someone uses iMessage, they have it on, the phone just does the iMessage thing. And you should leave iMessage on. It's fantastic. Then, if you don't have iMessage, it falls back to SMS or RCS. Now, neither of those are end-to-end encrypted. I saw that as people calling foul against RCS. SMS isn't either. So you're not any worse off security-wise than you were with SMS. And there is progress being made on adding encryption to RCS. It is there under some circumstances, but not the way Apple does it. It's very messy. But SMS is never going to have it. So better off using RCS because you get those features. Hopefully, eventually, you'll have better encryption. And so the phone just figures it out. And so at some point when it was enabled over the beta, texting with my brother-in-law, he was like, oh, you have RCS. Because I just by habit did a tap back a thumbs up on something, and it just worked. And so the RCS support is great, and just it's on by default. Just let the phone figure it out, and you get more and better features than you ever got in the SMS days.
Yeah, I just don't have friends anymore that aren't on Messages. It works. I got a couple green bubble friends, and you're right, it just works. And so that's that was a problem to be solved. I'm always curious why they took them so long. Maybe there's a good explanation, or maybe there isn't. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it's there now. And then they also added the ability to send satellite text messages, which I've not experimented with, and I've not been anywhere where it's been necessary. But that's cool. What do you think of the new Photos app?
Man, I really did not like it at first, but I have come around to it. And I actually had this exact conversation with my daughter, who's 14. Picked her from school yesterday, and she updated her phone over the weekend. She's like, why is the Photos app bad? I was like, okay, well, let me show you. So they got rid of the tabs across the bottom, and what that gave them was much more flexibility in different ways to show and filter your photos. The key here is scroll all the way to the bottom, and there's a reorder button. There, you can change the order and turn off things you don't want. And so if you don't care about memories, or you want featured photos at the top, or you want a utilities menu, which actually is really cool and you can horizontally swipe on to get more tools, you can rearrange all of that within Photos. And once I sort of got my head around that, it clicked. I still think visually it's a bit overwhelming at times, but the customization it offers that the old design could never afford, I think is worth the trade-off. So they've won me over on this, but it took a little time.
Well, you found the secret sauce. It's the customization button. For a long time, I felt like the kind of the new frontier of app development is not some particular design aesthetic, but the user customization. Like Carrot Weather to me is like the alpha example of this. Like you can make Carrot Weather into whatever kind of weather app you want it to. And I think that's the way these apps should go.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was very, I'm impressed that Apple did this to their Photos app. But I think a lot of people see the original decisions they made and they just freak out. But no, you can make Photos app exactly how you want it now. And I think I'm with you. I think it's an improvement. But if you go into the Photos app and scroll to the bottom, there's a big like banner there. It tells you, here, click on this thing. This is how you're going to be able to fix it. I'm sure they're getting feedback on it and they're worried about it because it is such an important app to people. But I think this is exactly what they should be doing. I want this with Apple Mail. I want all of the apps to let me decide what's important for me. And I hope that the reaction to this doesn't chill their vibe on that move,
Yeah. Yeah. I think that they are pretty committed to it. I mean, because there was a lot of backlash in the beta cycle. And then again, I think most people like me took a little more time. Like, okay, this is something reasonable, but we'll see. And it's on the iPad as well. On the Mac, some of the filtering is there, like the trips and the media type stuff that some of that's new, some of it's not. That's just all on the sidebar on the Photos app on the Mac. They didn't really rearrange it kind of visually. And I think that makes sense on the Mac. I think they're kind of doing this contextually, according to the OS they're on.
This episode of the Mac Power Users is brought to you by Backblaze. Go to the link in the show notes to get unlimited cloud backup for macOS and Windows. Try it for free today. Backblaze are the folks looking after your digital data with their unlimited computer backup for macOS and Windows for just $99 a year, so you can protect all your data automatically without even having to think about it. And it's not just for personal use either. Backblaze is great for businesses. Protect the whole team's data through a centrally managed administrative console. It's easy to deploy across multiple workstations with silent and link-based deployment options. And the Enterprise Control add-on includes granular access permissions, advanced single sign-on options, group management controls, and compliance support. You're in safe hands with Backblaze. They really know their stuff. They're recommended by the New York Times, Inc. Magazine, Macworld, PC World, LifeWire, Wired, Tom's Guide, 9 to 5 Mac, and more. And you can access your backup data from anywhere in the world using their web or their iOS or Android apps. That's a super handy feature. I'm a big fan of offsite backup, and I choose Backblaze for my offsite backup. I've been a customer for years, and I love that my offsite backups are handled without me ever thinking about it. I also like installing it on the computers of my family because I know they aren't going to pay as close attention to backup. And once I've got them hooked into Backblaze, they are constantly being backed up, which will save their bacon one day, whether they know it or not. Backblaze offers multiple restore options, including rapid recovery via USB hard drives shipped to you in the event of data loss or ransomware. Just pay a refundable fee and all your data will be sent to you directly. Visit backblaze.com/MPU so they know where you came from and continue their support. They've restored over 55 billion files for their customers. Don't be that person that forgot to back up their important files. Receive a fully featured, no-risk free trial at backblaze.com/MPU. Go there and have a play around. Start protecting yourself from a data disaster. Don't put it off. Start today. And our thanks to Backblaze for their support of the Mac Power Users and all of Relay FM.
Okay, David, we've been moving down in size. We started with the Mac, right?
Yeah, screens are getting smaller.
Yeah, now we're on the Watch. We're not doing HomePod today. I guess that'd be the end of the line because they have no screens. But Jonathan Reed wrote the watchOS 11 review at Mac Stories again. Check it out. He did a great job. watchOS is kind of in this weird place, I think, like sort of at a meta level. watchOS 10 brought a lot of structural changes to watchOS in terms of where things are and what the controls do, and introducing the smart stack, which I have actually really come to appreciate and like. The smart stack in particular is where a lot of the user features are in watchOS 11. So there's two things at play here. First one is live activities from the iPhone are now on the watch. And by default, they all come over. They basically take over the screen. They kind of like put you in that smart stack view. And while I like live activities on the watch, I don't want them auto launching. I don't want them taking over. And that's a setting in the iOS companion app where you can toggle that. So I will say, give this some time. I've been using the watchOS 11 beta for several weeks now, and it kind of, after a few weeks, like, yeah, actually, no, I prefer it the old way. But give it some time, because generally, I think having live activities in the watch are a perfect combination, because the watch would be glanceable information. And with live activities, that data is, being updated every couple of minutes. Usually they're laid out, in a very easy to read fashion. And I think overall it's a win, even if I don't want them auto launching.
Yeah, I agree too. I think the live activities is like the second generation of the Siri watch face.
Yes.
You remember that? And
yeah, rest in peace.
And this is like, unlike window management, I don't think this is done yet. I think they've got more ideas for this that we're going to see. And I think this is going to be kind of the platform they build upon. And I'm down with it. I have we can talk about watch faces in a minute, but I find scrolling into the live activities be quite useful to give me information I need. A lot of times I leave, like when I'm walking around, I work from home. I don't carry my phone with me all day. It's kind of like, magnetically attached to my desk here, and my watch is my only connection to the world as I'm walking around, and live activities makes it easier to get what I need. So I'm a big fan. Got some new health features this year. Interval training, people got a lot. I think that's kind of the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, they've always had it, but it seems like it's more powerful this year. Custom workouts, heart zones, all that. But something I wanted to know is, have you tried the new cycling metrics? I understand those are better. I ride a bike all the time, but I don't do it as a fitness thing. I do it's my transportation.
Yeah.
So I don't really do a lot of like workout stuff with that, but I know you do.
Yeah, I have only done, I think, one ride with watchOS 11, and it was basically just in the neighborhood. So I will report back on this, but I'll say generally, I said it earlier in the case discussion, I really like Apple cycling stuff. I like that your phone turns into a bike computer and you have several different UIs you can choose from. I think clearly someone at Apple is paying attention, especially with fall detection improvements in cycling. As someone who has crashed more than one bike over the years, I appreciate this. So, Apple's looking out for us.
Yeah. I mean, was it bad? Because did it need
No,
improvement?
it worked. No, it worked. At least in my experience. In my experience, it worked just fine. But they have a bunch of data points, and so I think they know what they're looking at.
One thing I like, the activity and fitness and smart stacks. I kind of like that because I don't really know if I want those to be complications. And but just one dial away from that information is good. And
sure.
And I think I think that's kind of the thing they're going for. And of course, because of live activities, we said this last year, it really frees you up to use more interesting watch faces.
Yeah.
You don't have to look for information dense faces to get all the information. And I thought, well, let's and a bit of news is the Explorer face was retired, which was one of my favorites. I don't know why that happened.
Yeah. I mean, the original utility watch face, which was like the best one on the original watch.
Yeah.
Like, a bunch of those old ones are still in there. I don't know why. I don't know why Explorer got, taken behind the woodshed on its own. I don't understand it, but these things come sometimes.
Yeah, I just don't understand the watch face strategy in general at Apple. You're talking about Jason getting the new Apple Watch 10. to me, one of the biggest benefits of the Ultra is the Ultra faces. The Ultra
Hmm.
faces are really good, but I don't know, man. Apple, we need more faces. I don't know if it's like a curated store. I mean, they love stores, right? Why not
Yeah.
have a curated store?
They made an
But
iMessage store for crying out loud.
yeah,
Come on.
I mean, we keep saying it. I'm like you ever hear the experiment about the shark and the fish, where they had the shark in the tank with the fish? Ever
I
told
don't
this
think so.
story? Yeah, they
Maybe.
did like this. They did a study once. They put a shark in a big tank with a fish that the shark would eat, and they put a glass partition between them, and the shark just kept banging into the glass, going after the fish, and eventually the shark just stopped paying attention to the fish, and then they took the glass partition out, and the shark wouldn't eat the fish. That's me and Apple Watch faces. I've banged my nose against that glass so many times. I don't even ask for it anymore. But man, wouldn't it be nice? Better
Yeah.
faces. What are you using these days as your faces?
Most days I'm using modular. That same thing I've done for a long time with a big calendar and then across the bottom reminders, activity rings, and the weather.
Reminders, huh? Are you using
Yeah,
reminders?
yeah, I'm doing my annual,
Okay,
trip
yeah.
around the GTD app scene. I also really like Wayfinder, which is a traditional watch in the middle and it's got complications on the inside and outside. And so those are kind of the two I normally use. And on the weekend or like during the podcastathon, I use Solar Graph just because it's really simple looking and doesn't have any of my data on it. So those are kind of the three I'm using. That's really been unchanged. The Ultra Faces, there's something about each of them I don't like. Just they don't quite do it for me.
Yeah, I'm using the modular ultra in a couple different iterations. I've still got a utility face, and I've got a wayfinder face, and I've got a California face, which I kind of switch between as the mood strikes me. But I'd say my day to day is ultra modular, um, and it's fine. But I just want more options. That's all.
Yep. The one thing I wanted to step back a second about the Smart Stack thing is that there is a feature in 11 that widgets can be suggested into the Smart Stack. This is like the widget stacks on iOS, where that by default they auto rotate and think suggested things and go into them. And I have it off on the phone and I have it off on the watch. Weirdly, not in the companion app. It's on the settings in the watch itself. I still 10 years later don't understand where things are, like the logic behind them. That's fine. They didn't ask me. But I just really didn't like the system putting widgets in the smart stack. I have a pretty short stack and like I have carrot weather in there. I don't need Apple's weather app to be suggested because it's getting ready to rain. Like I understand it from a discovery standpoint that like I didn't realize this app could do this, but I think for somebody who's been using a watch a long time, like I have mine dialed in the way I want it, so off it went.
I feel like Apple's always trying to do that. They're trying to throw more discoverable widgets at you because I think it's become such a part of the operating system. I mean, just think how much widgets, the ecosystem of widgets at this point. Everything from control center buttons to things on the sidebar of your Mac to the home screen on your iPad to your watch complications. They've really built that out, and I think they really want people to use it more. And so they're gonna make recommendations anywhere they can try. But I turn that off too. I don't want that. I know it's there.
Yeah.
So we're the Mac Power Users. You can find us over at relay.fm/MPU. Always fun talking about the new operating systems. This was a pretty solid beta year. They delivered the stuff we thought they would deliver. They didn't deliver the stuff that they didn't promise yet. There's an ongoing story this year with Apple Intelligence. We're going to be covering that as it evolves and looking forward to doing that. If you'd like to sign up for the extended version and the ad-free version of the show, go to relay.fm/MPU. Sign up for more power users there. Today on More Power Users, we're going to be talking about the podcastathon. In the meantime, thanks to our sponsors, SaneBox, Things, Squarespace, and Backblaze. And we'll see you next time.